Before we begin, thank you very much to Bonkleton for joining my Patreon campaign. Very much appreciated. And thank you for having a name that's fun to shout out to start off a video. Now, guys, when I told you I was caught up on my backlog of shoutouts, that is not a challenge. I think Bonkleton was literally the one in the comments section who stated, like, no, I'm pitching in just to keep TJ going. That's appreciated. Love it, but you don't need to do that. I'm no longer caught up. I am behind again. Thank you guys for the support. You guys have been ridiculous. We are doing Beast Machines, apparently. Looks like we're going to hit that goal at the end of the month. If we go to the next step is at 700, and that would be Prime. And we'd be doing all of Prime and the movie. So, yeah. Incentivizing. And my way of thanking you guys for your support. All this extra content that I can delve out thanks to you. We're all in the Dinobot mood right now, aren't we? So Hasbro did a thing announcing Dinobots, like pre-order for Snarl is up. By the way, if you use my Entertainment Earth link to pre-order Snarl, it does help out the channel a lot. So thank you very much for doing that. Then we got to meet this boy. We got to meet this big chonker. This is Scar. So guess who called it to spot on? Based on the IDW Dinobot that never really got a good appearance. And it is an Ankylosaurus. So that basically confirms we're getting a Dino King out of these because it's the last piece they needed. And it even forms the correct limb on Volcanicus. I love this thing. I love that he's the big chonker of the team. I love that he's the heavy. Oh, he's so good. And I'm so upset I'll never get a large toy of him. But since we're all in a Dinobot mood, I decided let's talk some Dinobots today. And unfortunately, we're not going to be able to talk like every single Dinobot because like there's just so many. There's just so many. So instead, we're going to talk about every incarnation of the Dinobot faction in Transformers because there's a lot of those too. But those I could hopefully squeeze into a convenient little 20-minute space. So we're going to start off, of course, with the classic, the G1 Dinobots. No real surprise here. Grimlock, Slag, Sludge, Snarl, Swoop, and sometimes Slug if we have to be a little bit more friendly in the UK. This is the classic team. We get the colors from this. We get the known personalities from this. And this is just such a good set. Like, the Dinobots have always been so well balanced. You've got some of the most popular dinosaurs there are across all 5 members. The unified color scheme really helps to solidify them as a team, more so than a lot of the combiner groups. And you've got, just about everything you could want as a dinosaur lover, except for an Ankylosaurus, but that's just me. Only took you 39 years to give me one that I wanted. But no, it's hard to argue them. It's the classic team. They've all been fantastic over the years. We have added to this team more than once. Scar is just the latest one. We have also added characters like Slash from the Power of the Primes universe, and Paddles, which I know a lot are like Paddles is like the third-party candidate, like people pulling for Paddles, even though they are in the depths of obscurity. But yeah, so there's plenty of others that have joined the G1 Dinobots later on, Scar being the newest, but it's always been about the core group, right? So, like, there's always add-ons, but they're temporary at best. And I think at this point we've got enough add-ons to actually make a brand new Dinobot team. But that hasn't stopped Hasbro from making other Dinobot teams as well. We move into Beast Machines. We had a whole subset called Transformers Dinobots. It was no longer a faction. It was an actual group. It was an actual, like, subline. So these were made up of essentially toys from Beast Wars that had yet to be repainted, as well as Beast Wars Neo toys that never came out in America. And all of them had new color schemes as well. With one exception, and you might notice him, it's Magmatron in the background, who is actually not the leader, even though he outranks T-Rex technically. Now remember, at the end of Beast Wars Neo, they implied something of a piece between Destron and Cybertron in that series. So it does make sense that after kind of becoming a little more chilled out and more agreeable, Magmatron would return to Cybertron, find the Viacon uprising, and file in under someone who knows more of what's going on. So this was another one of those teams created by the Oracle to combat what was going on Cybertron at the time. And they just have to all be dinosaurs. Convenient that. But it gave you a good chance of getting a lot of dinos that you hadn't had a chance at before. The Dinobot as a subline went so well that they did it again in Armada, once again releasing a few molds that had not come out in America previously, as well as giving some G1 colorization to some of the favorite dinosaur molds. So we got a new Grimlock Snarl, and essentially that's it. So we got Tyrannotron, who is in his own weird color scheme, and sometimes he's called Swoop. Sludge, who is a Dimetrodon now for some reason, and does not match his compadres. But Triceratodon, at least, has the color schemes going. I think that's the point where we figured out we couldn't use the word slag anymore, and they hadn't figured out how to handle that yet, so Triceratodon it was. This is also the first time I actually got to see a Ankylosaurus as a Transformer. I know it came out as Bazooka before, but hey, early internet, Bazooka was not very well known. But Slapper you get your hands on. It's not a great toy, by the way. These were great. I still regret skipping out on these because I love the idea of taking those dinosaur molds from all those different generations and redoing them in the classic colors. And also, they just make a really neat team up. Like, I saw them at Walmart, skipped on them, never saw them again. They're crazy expensive now. One more for the regret pile. We're moving on into Energon, where there's now two things we have to call Dinobots. For starters, Cruellock, remember, is not just a single character, he is a group of Terracons. And he is described as a species of Dinobot thought to be extinct. So technically he falls in line. Technically all of them fall in line, as that they are just Dinobots in general. But of course Energon had its own in America, and that's where we get into Grimlock and Swoop, who we've talked about on this channel before. I will still hold that Grimlock is a play school level toy, and Swoop is actually way underrated. It is a really, really nice figure that has never been reused, even though Grimlock has been. Figure that one out for me. So, yeah, go watch my Plastic Addict for Mega Dinobot if you don't know about these two. It's a sad ordeal. And the short of it is they were supposed to be brand new versions of the original characters done in Universe. They shuffled them into Energon instead. And, yeah, they're not the best. They're not the best. Classics had its own iteration as well, though those were kept down to Minicon level. This is just an excuse to do some dinosaur minicons because they hadn't done beasts throughout the entire Unicron trilogy. So Classics was the last chance to do minicons before the movie. They released a few that were supposed to be from Cybertron and never made it to the store shelves. This team was Swoop, Knockdown, and Terrorsaur. Terrorsaur being the Tyrannosaurus in this case. I don't know why. Also, by the ranking, I believe Swoop would technically be the leader of the squad, which is a little weird. But I guess, it's the only one that's technically in the right colors and name, so maybe there's seniority there. I don't know. Animated had its own set of Dinobots as well, harkening back to the originals. We have Grimlock, Swoop, and... So... Remember that thing I told you, they realized they couldn't use Slag as a name anymore. So what we got was Snarl. But Snarl was a Triceratops, not a Stegosaurus. It's a very weird melding of the two. If you even look at him right there, like he's got Snarl's shoulder pauldron things. He's got his like back armor where his tail has split. But he's also got a lot of elements of Slag in him as well. So... it's a weird blend of the two. So in Animated's universe, these came about from dinosaur attractions that was repaired by Sumdac and then enhanced into basically attack drones by Megatron, and then given life when Sari accidentally juiced them up with the Allspark. So you come up with two that are mute, or possibly just too dumb to talk, and then Grimlock, who's just barely smart enough to do the talking. So he comes across dumber than G1 Grimlock, and about as loyal as comic book Grimlock as well, More or less just like very territorial and just very dumb about alliances. When like it's an infatuation with Black Arachnia where he finally finds loyalty, which means it's not really correctly placed, but that's how that goes. It was a fun set. I do wish they had done more. Because the animated ones did something that was rare for Dinobots at the time, because this was really the first time we kind of like revisited the original aesthetic and the original styles. They actually tried to make them different from each other. They weren't just all the same big hulking mass of silver and red. They all have their own thing going on, which I thought was a really cool touch. Would have been cool to see what, Snarl, what even would you call Snarl if Snarl was already taken? No, okay, that would get messy. That would get messy. All right. We have to talk about the Shattered Glass ones as well. So, this is an interesting one. So, in this universe, all of the Dinobots are Wheeljack's creation, powered by artificial intelligences instead of sparks. And they were just mindless beasts, for the most part, until two events happened. The first one is that many of them were rounded up by the Decepticons, who remember are the heroes in Shattered Glass, reprogrammed them to be more docile and cooperative, and forming a different faction of heroic Dinobots named Dinotrons. Or Dinocons. Dinotron's a different thing. Dinocons. You get the idea. Now, and of course, because it's Shattered Glass, the way it broke down was essentially like all the dinosaurs from G1 Decepticons, including Slugfest and Overkill, and the Dino Force from Japan, all ended up on the good guy side, whereas the classic Dinobots ended up on the bad guy side. Regardless of where they ended up, though, you have a Grimlock who was originally mindless and savage, who gained a spark of intelligence of his own, and thusly rounded up all Dinobots, and then took them to get sparks of their own, turning them into real transforming robots in disguise. So even the faction that was against him at the time. So, a smart Grimlock can actually do something nice even if he is a bad guy. It's a convoluted little take on the Dinobots, but I think it's interesting because it like wraps every dinosaur from G1 into being Dinobots. Like Victory had the Dino Force, which one member moved on from. We'll talk about him here in a bit. But I do like the idea that like literally everything was a dinosaur. Like all of them were dinosaurs in this universe. Or were Dinobots in this universe. Speaking of, Grimstone from Power Core Combiners. Alright, so a lot of people loved this one from Power Core. Because it was unified. It looked a lot more solid than the other ones did. I found it guilty of a lot of the same things, and I think the core figure suffered a lot for the combination, where like even the individual robot mode just didn't feel like a good toy. So I feel like it just kind of fell in with the low quality of them in general. But it is technically a Dinobot squad, even though Grimstone is the only named one. We have a Parasaurolophus. I was trying so hard to get through that without stumbling. Apache Cephalosaurus, an Ankylosaurus, so second time my favorite dinosaur gets a little bit of gold and silver, and then what they call a Spinosaur drone, which is absolutely just a Dimetrodon. I don't know why they tried with Spinosaurus on that one. It's not even close. Even a Dimetrodon kind of falls in the same area as like Swoop being a Pteranodon. They're not technically dinosaurs. It's a weird situation, but that is technically correct. It's kind of like Dinozords in that regard. We call them Dinozords even though there's a Mastodon and a saber-toothed tiger in them. Same logic. They're in by association. So let's give them credit for that at least. Now, in the Japanese version, Grimstone was actually Grim Master. And that was a... oh, man, why am I gonna forget his name right now when I need it? Kakuryu. So, of the Dino Force, Kakuryu was actually really friendly. He got along with kids. Like, he didn't really like being a bad guy. And thusly, the Japanese version of Power Core wrote a storyline where he actually had left the Dino Force and joined the Autobots and became a Dinobot and this was his team to command. I love that. I love the redemption arc. I love bringing one of the Decepticon ones over. I mean, it gives him depth. It gives him like a nice conclusion to his storyline, because if you watch Victory, yeah, Kakaryu never felt like a Decepticon. It always felt like he was on the wrong team. So good of Takara to work about a mid-level toy into something that actually does have something special to him. Fall of Cybertron also has its own set of Dinobots. In the comic books, originally depicted with vehicle modes, and then later on, finding out about and adapting dinosaur modes. This is pretty, like, it kind of falls in line with like the comic book depiction of Dinobots, where, you know, they're not as intelligent, but they're capable. Like, they can speak, they can fully speak, but they are still brutal. They are still kind of off on their own. They kind of still do their own thing, regardless of what the Autobots are doing. So they kept that rebellious side of them. Now, technically, Fall of Cybertron falls into the same universe as Prime and thusly Robots in Disguise 2015. So technically, these are all aligned Dinobots, even though we have to talk about a completely different subset of them later on. And I will go ahead and tell you, the Fall of Cybertron ones, it's the same 5 team. We know them. We're going to talk about the movie ones briefly, and we talk about them briefly because they really don't have any personality to them. They are just big, snarling special effects. Michael Bay didn't like Dinobots. Didn't think they made sense. Had to crowbar them in because, Hasbro mandates, popularity, whatever. And yeah, they just kind of feel tacked on in Age of Extinction, which is already a overloaded movie. And the Dinobots just feel like what should be really cool just feels like more of an accessory, like an appendix to the movie, if anything. And then you got, at the very least, you've got a lot of new Dinobots in the mix. And I say new, they are imitations of the originals. So you've got Grimlock, of course, but you don't have Swoop, you have Strafe. You don't have Sludge, you have Slog. This is also where we adapted the name Slug as a replacement for Slag. Funny that all it took was changing one vowel, right? It also introduced a few others. Scorn, being like the actual Spinosaur, and probably my favorite of the new Dinobots. So at the very least, we got a different take on them. There's some cool designs that came out of it, but they really underutilized these guys, like tremendously. So it's an unfortunate turn, but that's kind of how a lot of movie Transformers go. Just feel like they're there, and then that's it, and they don't really take advantage of them beyond that. We also have to talk about Creo briefly. So Creo did a ton of stuff that were labeled as Dinobots. And they had ones that were based on the Age of Extinction group. They had ones based on G1, and then they just had tons like this. Like, this is Grimstone, again, as a combiner himself, but he has made a 4 individual, he made these 4 individual Dinobot characters who really don't come across very Dinobot-y. You look at Iron Eye there, and it just looks like he flipped his head down. Like, literally, that's literally all it looks like he does. Flip the head down. That's T-Rex? I don't know. And then Crackback, who is also another Ankylo, and a kind of a sad one at that. Creo is just, they wanted to do dinosaurs, they did dinosaurs. And they did a lot of them. They all have weird names. Some are Decepticons, but they're all Dinobots technically. We can also talk about the Rescue Bot incarnation of Dinobots. In this one, Rescue Bots were mostly treating Dinobots as just kind of like an alternate to go with. They refer to themselves as Dinobots, not less as a team name as much as just like a species of sorts, or just like a generic term, for it. So aside from this, the toy line also expanded on this idea, creating a ton of little dinosaurs, some based on the original Dinobots and being a little bit more simple and smaller, and then obviously these that are based on the main cast of the original cartoon, including Optimus Prime, who actually is the T-Rex here. It's a fun idea. It lets kids have like little dinosaur things, and it's kind of in this fun little area that I like about Rescue Bots, where like it doesn't treat the vehicle mode as so sacred. It plays around, so the same characters can have different alt modes, and I think that's a lot more fun. I think it creates a lot of interesting possibilities. So I thought this was a cool idea. All right, now we can get into RID 2015, and we can talk about these types of Dinobots. Now, we only saw 2 in the cartoon. Fictionally, we know there's more than this, but we only saw 2. Grimlock, of course, and then I believe the name is Scowl. Scowl is another Ankylosaurus, but this one is Decepticon, as Grimlock was at the start, as all animalistic Transformers are in 2015. This is like the only sniff we got, and they're basically just normal characters. They don't really exemplify anything about Dinobots themselves, not in the traditional sense. But this is because these guys are actually a species. Dinobots in this show are actually referred to as a different species of Transformer than your standard Autobot and Decepticon, which is an interesting little take. Like biologically they're different, which is weird. But yeah, this is another time where they go like, you want an Ankylosaurus Transformer? Here's one in the cartoon. It's not getting a toy. Half the good designs in the show aren't getting toys. I have issues with this series. And that takes us to our latest incarnation of the classic Dinobots, the latest team to form up on screen. And this one is fascinating to me. It is the traditional 5 Dinobots, all right? So we got all of them accounted for, but Cyberverse did this wonderful thing where they didn't treat the original personalities as sacred. Grimlock does have his traditional mannerisms and speech in beast mode, but in robot mode, he's intelligent, well-spoken, adventurous, a loyal Autobot. It's a very different take on the Big Bruiser. The others and the team start to have more traditional Dinobot traits, but all of them stand out from each other. They have separate personalities, rather than just all kind of being the same big dumb brute like they were in G1. The biggest standout is Swoop, who is not only female in this show, but is also potentially the smartest character in the entire series, even outclassing the likes of Perceptor and Wheeljack. And I love Girl Swoop. I love smart Girl Swoop. Just desperately trying to get these big lugs to actually listen to reason and follow a plan. It's the kind of change up I don't really mind, because guess what? Before this, your only female Dinobots were really like, your only female Dinobots were like Slash from Power of the Primes and Strafe from the IDW comic books, who is technically not even a dinosaur. She's just kind of a monster that kind of fell in with them. So I liked adding a little bit of female to the original group. Swoop makes sense. I like having a brain on the team. For once, having a brain amongst the Dinobots, I thought was fun. And that is going to wrap us up. Now, we do have Dinobot teams to look forward to in the future. The Legacy Evolution group is the new Volcanicus. It's the G1 team, but they're doing their own thing too. And of course, we have Earthspark introducing Grimlock soon, and potentially more Dinobots to follow, as they usually do when he shows up. So that's your history lesson for the day. There's been a ton of different teams and even Transformer species referred to as Dinobot. Tons to collect, tons to go through. And yeah, all great for you dinosaur fans out there. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for supporting as well. It means the world to me. If you can't afford the Patreon, I get it. I get that. That's fine. Hit like, hit subscribe. It's an absolutely free way of supporting the channel too. Really appreciate that as well. And I will see you next time. Guys, I am facing the most powerful enemy any YouTuber can face, the algorithm, and I need your help to defeat him. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment. Every time you do, we attack that algorithm and we drive it back until it can no longer defeat this channel. Thank you very much.